Hi, sixth graders. Today we're reviewing Unit 1, Part 1. These are the earliest people on the Earth. Our goal for today is to be able to describe the earliest people on Earth and how they began to farm. So these are the earliest people that we know of in history, and they're also the earliest time period that you'll be tested on the LEAP test, which is in just about 4 weeks. So the age of the earliest people is known as the Paleolithic age. I'm going to say that one more time because it's kind of tough. Paleolithic. The Paleolithic age is known as the Old Stone Age. So Paleolithic and Old Stone Age are synonyms. It's a time when people lived in small bands or groups of people and they did not farm. So this is an example of what Paleolithic or Old Stone Age people might look like. You see they're in a small group. They're working with animal hides that they have caught, and they're not really living in anywhere permanent. So let's continue learning about the Paleolithic age. The earliest people on Earth were hunter-gatherers. And so these Paleolithic people are what we call hunter-gatherers. That means that they spent most of their time looking for food. Women would gather berries or fruits and nuts in the forest. They didn't grow them themselves, they would just go find them. And men hunted. So here in this picture, we see a woman going to a bush to gather some berries, and we see a man walking back with an animal that he's found in the forest and hunted. And this man over here is fishing. So there weren't a lot of social classes. There were not like a lot of division on um, jobs because the only jobs that people had were to get food, either to hunt or to gather. And that's because whenever you are not farming, it's really difficult to create a surplus of food or more food than you need. So you spend all of your time looking for food. The people of the Paleolithic age were nomads. A nomad is a person who moves from place to place to follow the food that they're hunting. They were nomads because they were following the migration patterns of animals that they hunted for food. We see in this picture, we have walls that are made of animal hide. This man's holding some deer antlers. Paleolithic people would have to follow those animal herds. So they needed to be able to build temporary shelters like tents that they could quickly pack up and move when they noticed the herds are leaving. Because these are some of the earliest people, their inventions are not very high tech. Fire was the greatest invention of the Paleolithic age. It helped people keep warm, it helped them cook, fight against animals, and it gave them light at night. So, fire, while it doesn't seem like a big deal to us today, was a really big revolutionary turning point for Paleolithic or Old Stone Age people. So over time, people began to change, and we entered a new time period that historians today call the Neolithic Age. Paleolithic means Old Stone Age, Neolithic means new. I usually remember it because both Neolithic and new start with N's, so the Neolithic is the new. The biggest change between New and Old Stone Age is that in the Neolithic Age, people began to settle in communities, so they stopped moving around and they began farming. So we see here in this picture a Neolithic community. You see people farming grains here, and you see their structures that they live in. Their homes look much more permanent. You can't just pack up their homes and move anymore because you can't leave your crops. So if they were planting these grains here and they left, the grains would die. So now people are having to build permanent homes to tend to their crops. The agricultural revolution, also known as the Neolithic Revolution, is the big change in human history when people stopped hunting and gathering and they began farming. And so we see that in this name here, agricultural revolution. Agriculture just means to farm, and revolution means big change. So this is the big change of farming. Previously, we had hunter gatherers. They were nomadic, they lived in small groups, they did not have civilizations. With the invention of farming, the world changes. This is a big invention. During this time, they began to domesticate plants and animals for human use. So this happened after the Ice Age started to end. So during the time of hunter-gatherers, the Earth entered this period of just getting really, really cold. It was snowy all around the Earth, and hunter-gatherers would survive by hunting animals that thrived in the snow, like these woolly mammoths. But as the Earth began to warm up, Animals like this began to die off, and with the big game dying off, people needed to find a new way to get food. Conveniently, because it's getting warmer, it's also better climate for growing crops. So as the Ice Age ends, people begin to learn how to farm. Now, this was a gradual change. Gradual means slow. There was no point where someone just snapped their finger and said, okay, the whole world knows how to farm now. Instead, individual communities around the world would slowly learn how to farm. And then through cultural diffusion, when one group would meet another group, they would teach each other the methods of farming. And so it would very slowly spread. It took thousands and thousands and thousands of years for farming to spread around the world. But when it did, it helped hunter gatherer or Paleolithic societies transition to farming societies where they were more settled. We are going to skip our video, but you are going to fill in right now what I'm sorry, you're going to fill in this T-chart to compare and contrast hunter-gatherers and agricultural villages. So describe what are hunter-gatherers like and what are agricultural villages like. All right, let's review. So hunter-gatherers were nomadic. In hunter-gatherer societies, women gathered berries and the men hunted, and they lived in small bands. You could have also put that fire was their greatest invention. And then let's compare that to the agricultural villages of the Neolithic age. In the Neolithic age, they had permanent settlements, specialized jobs, they lived in larger communities, and they farmed for food. So we're seeing that as time goes on from the old to the new Stone Age, things are getting more advanced, more settled, and we're getting closer to civilizations, which helped build the modern world that we live in today. So there were some changes in society due to farming. Farming allowed people to live in settled communities. Soon, towns and civilizations emerged. Farming allowed these first civilizations to develop. So, previously we have hunter-gatherers. They spend all their time looking for food. They don't have time to develop anything else. They can't build permanent homes. They're just moving around and trying to survive. As people begin to farm, now they're able to stay in one place and invite more people to come and live with them. So cities get larger and larger and larger, and eventually civilizations are developed. So how does this happen? This happens because farming allowed a surplus of food to be grown. Now, a surplus means that you have more than you need. I used to have a surplus of construction paper one year when my principal told all of the students to bring me a pack of construction paper. So I had 100 packs of construction paper. Even if we had used construction paper every day, we still would have had some left over at the end of the year. I had a surplus of construction paper. When you farm, you also get a surplus, but a surplus of food. When you have a surplus of food, that means you don't need everyone farming anymore. This allows different groups of people in the society to focus on jobs other than just gathering food, and that's known as specialization. Specialization, we have that in America today. When you have a specialized job, you have a job where you do just one thing. So this man here specializes in being an electrician. This woman specializes in being a doctor. We wouldn't ask a doctor to do our electrical work because they don't specialize in that. In ancient times, people were able to begin specializing. So now we could have people who dedicate their time to making clothes or shoes or art. So specialization allowed civilizations to develop religion, art, tool, and other important inventions such as writing and the wheel. So now that people aren't spending all their time farming or hunting and gathering, they're able to start using their minds to invent new stuff. So technology is going to start taking off. And now that we have specialized jobs, people are going to start dividing into different social classes. In the hunter-gatherer time of the Old Stone Age, it was just men hunt, women gather. There weren't really social classes. No one was really above the rest. But now with different jobs, we're going to see that some jobs give people more money and power than others. So let's kind of review, how did all of this happen? How do we get to these specialized jobs? Well, first you settle in a river valley. And we know that once you're in the river valley, then you begin farming. After you've farmed for a while, you'll have a surplus of food. And finally, with that surplus, you can allow other people to stop farming and begin specializing in different crafts. Here we see this was the social structure of ancient Egypt, where different jobs gave you different power and different wealth. We still have that in America today. Some people have much more power and wealth. Like, let's think about Donald Trump. He's both really, really rich and he's the president. He's got a lot of power over our lives today. And while other people, like teachers, don't have quite as much power as someone like a president of the United States. All right, and so the requirements to farm. So we've talked about how we went from the old Stone Age, where people are just hunting and gathering, to settled communities in the new Stone Age, where people are beginning to farm, and how that eventually leads to civilizations. But what do you need before you can even start that farming? Well, first, you need rivers. If you have not learned that you need rivers to farm this year, you should learn that right now because that's an important fact. They needed the rivers to give them fresh water and fertile soil for farming. And then, in addition to that, in order to bring the water to the crops, people would dig trenches and canals. This was called irrigation. So let's just look really quick at what that looks like. This is what a little farming plot would look like in ancient times. Here it is next to the river, and in the summer, the river floods. So here you see the farmland is actually covered by the water. After the water levels go down in the fall or autumn, it leaves behind this rich, fertile soil. You hear the word fertile and fertilizer. It's soil that's good for farming. So this fertile soil is left behind. They plant their crops, they grow their crops, and they use the river throughout the year to give water to the crops. So the rivers are really, really important both for providing water and for fertile soil. Here's a farming society, and you see again, we're right by the river, the farms are nearby, and here's that irrigation, that method to bring water to dry land. They would dig those trenches and canals from the river to their crops in order to bring water to them. All right, you have 5 review questions. Answer those on your paper and then raise your hand to show your teacher. Have a great day.